We're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm here with Jerome Gessaroli. He's a senior fellow at the Macdonald Laurier Institute, as well as project lead for the BC Institute of Technology's Sound Economic Policy Project. Jerome, we were just talking about the supply chain and critical minerals and so on. Is Canada doing, you were talking about the length of time. It sounds like Canada is not doing what it needs to do to be part of the critical minerals supply chain of the future right now.
Well, as of now, no, I would agree with that. But we're not improving our regulatory burden and lessening uncertainty for business to go ahead on these projects. I mean, these projects they are high risk projects and potentially high reward. And Canada's got a lot of expertise. We definitely have a comparative advantage in mineral development. Mm-hmm. And there's something wrong that if it's taking 15 years to get these mines underway, we need to come up with better certainty on the impact assessments process, so that we can have production and feeding U.S. plants, Canadian plants with our raw materials. That's where the emphasis needs to be made, and it's a lot cheaper to develop efficient regulatory policy than it is to fund $113 billion subsidy initiative with one plant.
Now, you were talking earlier about the costs associated with this kind of industrial policy that we have. Let's flip it over there and ask you this question: how can the government help attract new industry without using these subsidies when the United States is using these subsidies, and I gather Europe is going to start to use these subsidies? How can we fight against that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and that is a challenging question. But first of all, we cannot compete with the type of subsidies that the Biden administration has initiated. Okay, they're too big. They're just too generous for us to compete. So what we need to do, we need to focus on our comparative advantage in our economy. What do we do well? What do we do competitively? And we need to set a regulatory framework, a bureaucratic framework that's efficient, that allows business to do what they do best. And that's to create the mines, to create the jobs, etc. And there'll be a lot of spin-off activity from that. We need a tax regime that is less complicated. Mm-hmm. And generally, I think the best thing that we could do is make it easier for business to operate in this country. We don't score that well on a lot of international scores for ease of doing business in this country, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. I mean, we can. It's just up to us to want to do something like that.
In a sense, we're not very competitive when compared to our economic peers. Is that right?
No, we're not. We're not. And when we see in something like mining, where we're considered to be kind of world leaders, when we have difficulty even in what we're considered to be the best at, then that there's something significantly wrong. I mean, we cannot get a pipeline built in this country, no matter what. And business knows that. And they make their decisions. They move their capital elsewhere. But it's not for the government to come in, okay, well, we'll replace private capital. Well, if we do that, we're into a totally different economic policy and economic system than what we've had before and what's worked so well before. So we have to look at what are we doing wrong and what do we need to do to get businesses to come back and to look at Canada favorably as a place to undertake large projects.
Do you think that have you heard that from business, that it's difficult to do business in Canada on that scale?
Well, we see it through their actions.
Yeah,
we see it through their actions. Not only is there little in the way of there's no. I'm not aware of any major pipeline project, new one that's being proposed. But moreover, we see the divestment of a lot of corporations of their energy assets in Canada, and the energy industry in Canada seems to be becoming more and more concentrated to a few companies, and that's not necessarily a healthy thing. And so, I think we can actually see it through
Right.
through the actions.